Google recently released its latest AI model, Gemini 3. And do you know how many Nvidia chips were used for that model? 0. They've used 0 Nvidia chips. And that sent shivers down Nvidia's spine. The reaction to this is that Google is now up by 1.5%, while Nvidia is now down by 2.5%, and even more so in the pre-market hours. The reaction to this is that Nvidia had to make a defensive statement on X. So, is Nvidia now truly in trouble? And is Google now the AI king? Recently, Nvidia has already been in a negative spotlight, partly because of its round-tripping of earnings. And many are questioning now if this is truly an AI bubble. Even Ray Dalio has come out and said that this is definitely an AI bubble.
There's definitely a bubble in the markets.
And is Google the search-dominant business that was previously conceived as perhaps the business that had the most to lose in the AI revolution, is it now in fact on the AI comeback? What is exactly the difference between Google's own TPU chips and Nvidia's GPUs? Who makes Google's TPUs? We're going to cover everything related to this topic, and we're going to show you insights from Google insiders themselves. Google has been in the news for quite a bit. Warren Buffett, with his Berkshire Hathaway, has recently revealed in its filings that it added a position to Google worth $4.3 billion, which is now one of his top 10 holdings. Alphabet stock rose by 5.3%, almost doubling its price since the April lows. NATO and Google Cloud signed a multi-million-dollar deal for AI-enabled sovereign cloud. Even Anthropic, who has built the Claude model, which is very popular in coding, has announced that they want to expand the use of Google Cloud TPUs and services. I quote, "Today we are announcing that we plan to expand our use of Google Cloud technologies, including up to 1 million TPUs, dramatically increasing our compute resources as we continue to push the boundaries of AI research and product development. The expansion is worth tens of billions of dollars and is expected to bring in well over a gigawatt of capacity online in 2026. Anthropic now serves over 300,000 business customers and has grown nearly 7 times in the last year. And now yesterday, it wasn't only Anthropic, it's also Meta that came out. That Meta is now in talks to use Google's chips in challenge to Nvidia. Even Meta is looking to buy chips from Google. Here, an article from Yahoo Finance says the following. For years, Google has limited its custom tensor processing units, TPUs, to its own cloud data centers, renting them out to companies running large-scale AI workloads. But according to the information, Google is now pitching the chips for deployment inside customers' own data centers, marking a major shift in strategy. So why are they wanting to move away from Nvidia and want to adopt Google's TPUs? Well, one of the reasons is that they're trying to avoid the Nvidia tax. Because if you see here, Nvidia has a net profit margin of 52.8%. Compare that with the S&P 500's average of 13%. So basically, if you're buying Nvidia chips, the money is going to Nvidia's pocket, or at least half of it. So there's definitely an opportunity for companies to save on cost if they move to Google's TPUs. But we don't know yet what their cost is going to be, but we can expect them to be lower than Nvidia's chips. From the perspective of Meta, see here in this tweet, Zuck explains that the risk of staying behind in AI is costlier than overspending. This is why there will be eventually a bubble, because they'll keep building until overcapacity is clear. Let's have a look to see what the man himself says.
You were going to spend like $600 billion? I mean, that's
I did, yeah, through 2028, which is
that's a lot of money.
It is, and if we end up misspending a couple of $100 billion, I think that is going to be very unfortunate, obviously. But what I'd say is I actually think the risk is higher on the other side. If you build too slowly, and then super intelligence is possible in 3 years, but you built it out assuming it would be there in 5 years, then you're just out of position on what I think is going to be the most important technology that enables the most new products and innovation and value creation in history.
So you see, from the perspective of a CEO, there's more risk, according to Mark Zuckerberg, to be on the other side of underspending, because then you risk losing your position. He basically says that this is one of the most important technologies of the coming decade and doesn't want to be left behind. So why do they all want to move away from Nvidia? Well, one of the things is that they don't want to pay the Nvidia tax. Just look at the capex of Google. It says here, investments in technical infrastructure totaled $63 billion for the first 9 months of 2025. So of course, in large amounts like this, it's so important to save your cost. And this is where Nvidia could potentially be challenged by Google. So they released Gemini. Gemini 3 shows that you don't need Nvidia chips to build a leading model. In fact, Gemini 3 was released and it was the #1 model on the leaderboards. It says here, the Gemini app now has 650 million monthly active users and AI Overviews has 2 billion monthly users, the company said. OpenAI said in August that ChatGPT hit 700 million weekly users. So Gemini is on the rise. And if we break down even further their users, we see here that in 2024, they were around 90 million. June 2025, 350. November 2025, 650. So this is a rapid catch-up that they're doing to ChatGPT here. Now, I saw this tweet though, and this is apparently from someone that works at Google. It says, due to capacity constraints, we are temporarily serving Gemini 2.5 Pro for all users. Isn't it funny though? Like here, the market is crashing Nvidia's, but it seems like Google themselves cannot keep up with their own demand. So how are they going to build more chips then to service others? This is indeed a question. Let me show you something interesting that happened on Xland. It says here, Mark Benioff, who is the CEO of Salesforce, he says, holy shit, I've used ChatGPT every day for 3 years, just spent 2 hours on Gemini 3. I'm not going back. The leap is insane. So this tweet went viral with 3.4 million views. And it had some reaction. It says here from Henry Blodgett, OpenAI is in trouble. But Brad Gerstner from Altimeter Capital, he says, really, that's your signal analysis conclusion? But Brad seems to think that the tweet doesn't provide much signal. He further says that ChatGPT has re-accelerated, almost 900 monthly weekly users. Benchmarks have converged. Product velocity is the key. So he's right in the sense that ultimately for these companies, what matters is the adoption. And for that, OpenAI is still in the lead. Now going back to the market, how it's reacted, it's interesting though, because here we see that Google is now accounting for 19.4% of the S&P's year-to-date gain, the most among any stock. This comes as the company has already added 1.3 trillion in market cap this year. Nvidia has had the second largest impact of 16%. But looking at Nvidia's and Alphabet's prices, we can see that they're starting to diverge quite massively. So while Alphabet is up, Nvidia is down. And the breaking news of the Google TPUs, it shook the AI chip trade. All the AI chip related companies, they have gone down. And as a reaction, Nvidia came out with this statement. We're delighted by Google's success. They've made great advances in AI and we continue to supply to Google. Nvidia is a generation ahead of the industry. It's the only platform that runs every AI model and does it everywhere computing is done. Nvidia offers greater performance, versatility, and fungibility than ASICs, which are designed for specific AI frameworks or functions. Now, many have questioned, if Nvidia is so strong in its position, why did it come out with this defense? This doesn't really seem to be coming from a position of strength, but rather from a position of weakness. Now, I've been hanging out on X and I want to show you some posts because these are from Google insiders. He says that in his experience at Google, TPUs were better than GPUs on many benchmark. Never made sense to me why Nvidia would be so dominant. Seems like the market is finally pricing in the reality. So this is coming from someone that worked on Google. Then there was another guy that came out and said that GPUs have this one unique property that TPUs don't have, which is that you can buy one. Well, I would say that Anthropic would like to have a word with you, James Wang. Then there's another researcher here. It says that the sell-off shows how clueless the market is about hardware and the demand. And down in the comments we find a post that says TSMC was down in the morning for no reason. People could have just Googled what fab Google uses to build their TPUs. Markets are just looking for a reason to sell a bit. So who exactly makes Google's TPUs? So this is a question you need to be asking to yourself. So I asked Gemini 3 and this is the answer. The manufacturing ecosystem works like this. Google is the designer. Google designs the tensor processing unit as specialized chips in-house. Broadcom is the design partner. Historically and for many current generations, Google has partnered with companies like Broadcom to help with the physical design, layout, and manufacturing liaison. Reports suggest Google is also exploring partnerships with others, like MediaTek, for future generations to diversify and optimize cost. And then here, lastly, TSMC, foundry manufacturer. The actual fabrication of the silicon wafers, turning Google's design into physical chips, is done by TSMC on its advanced process nodes like 4 or 5 nanometer. So in short, it's the same manufacturer who makes Google TPUs and Nvidia GPUs, TSMC. Then I also found this interesting tweet that explains the differences between the TPUs that Google makes and the GPUs that Nvidia makes. So let's have a look here. He says the advantage of the TPUs, it's a lot cheaper than Nvidia while offering comparable performance. Nvidia's advantage? Best software support and entrenched ecosystem. Highest token throughput per watt. Not competing with their customers. Rubin CPX helps them reduce cost for their customers doing inference, king of low precision workloads. In a power-constrained world where watts are limited, Nvidia will always maintain an advantage as it enables its customers to generate the highest amount of revenue per watt by generating the most tokens. This was Jensen's pitch at January's GTC. Nvidia will never compete with its customers, unlike Google, and its software is more proliferated and easier to use. Rubin CPX will also enable Nvidia's customers to better optimize their TCOs for inference. In a TCO-sensitive world, total cost of ownership, Google can easily undercut Nvidia by providing a cheaper option. But software adoptions will be challenging, as it is custom built for Google, and they will also directly compete with their largest customer. If Google opens the floodgates, then I expect Nvidia's margins to go down, but revenue and profit won't get hurt, as the overall demand is just too high. So that was a really great post by Cypher, which really outlines differences between the two chips. Let's also have a look at what Jensen Huang has to say about the metrics that truly matter.
Two ways to think about it. One way is, let's just think about it from a perspective of revenues.
Yes.
Okay. So everybody's power limited. And let's say you were able to secure 2 more gigawatts of power. Well, that 2 gigawatts of power, you would like to have translate to revenues.
Yes.
So your performance or tokens per watt was twice as high as somebody else's token per watt because I did deep and extreme co-design.
Right.
And my performance was much higher per unit energy. Then my customer can produce twice as much revenues from their data center.
So he basically says that you have to look at tokens per watt. So if we are to take Jensen Huang's own metric, tokens per watt, let's compare the TPUs and the GPUs to see which one is better. So this answer, I gotta be honest, is from Gemini 3, so it might be biased. So Nvidia has high tokens per dollar, but the Google TPUs has the highest tokens per dollar. It says further that TPU's specialized design, integration into Google Cloud, and internal optimization often yield the best cost efficiency for compatible LLM workloads. Now, its architecture is different between the two. NVIDIA uses CUDA, whereas the TPUs of Google seem to be specialized, specific for AI workloads. But this is very interesting to note. Because here we're looking at the cost to train LLMs. And it says here that Google TPUs are significantly lower. Reports suggest 4 to 10 times more cost effective for training massive models at scale compared to similar GPU setups. So NVIDIA offers then higher premiums. So this is basically the NVIDIA tax that Google's trying to avoid. So this is exactly the reason why Anthropic and Meta are interested in these TPUs. Then if you look at the power efficiency, it even says that the TPUs offer superior performance per watt. The TPUs are generally 2 to 3 times more energy efficient for AI tasks. The only downside seems to be then that there's a high dependency on the Google Cloud. It even says here, the ecosystem lock-in. So that means that NVIDIA is still more flexible for different data centers. So that basically shows that the TPUs from Google are more efficient and more specific and cost-effective for AI training. So that's of course the reason why Meta and Anthropic are now in talks with Google to obtain these Google-specific TPUs as they're more cost-effective. And that of course is very good business for Google. As NVIDIA is now the largest company in the world, Google is very much poised to take a market share from NVIDIA. We should not expect the demand of Nvidia chips to go down as Google still has much to prove, but over time it can definitely be that Nvidia's margins have to come down to be able to compete with Google's chips. Let's also have a look at how many TPUs were actually made versus how many GPUs does Nvidia make. This is an interesting stat to look at because this could potentially tell you the capacity of Google and how much market share they could potentially take away from Nvidia. So it says here that Nvidia has made between 4 to 5 million data center GPUs, H100s and A100s. It says that the total active fleet is around 10 million plus in active data centers. So the pace of production is explosive, shipping 500K H100s per quarter currently. Then if you look at Google, they've only, until very recently, only used the TPUs for internal use, and it's estimated that they have made 100 to 300,000 TPUs between 2023 and 2024. And it says that their total fleet is between 600,000 and 1 million TPUs. Now, one thing to verify though, can we actually directly compare one TPU with one GPU, or is the capacity different? So I asked Gemini this question, and it says that no, the answer is generally 2 to 1. So 2 Google TPUs roughly equal 1 Nvidia H100 GPU in raw speed. But it's not that simple because Google doesn't design its own chips to win on a one-on-one fight. So in the breakdown, it's basically showing that Nvidia's chips are designed to work in 1 or 100 or 1000 configuration. But Google's philosophy is to make a smaller, less performant chip, but that works really well at scale. So at scale, Google's TPUs become cheaper than Nvidia's, and that's exactly where the opportunity is for Google. And once they start selling these to their customers, then of course this is an added important revenue stream for Google. So that sums it up why the market is reacting so aggressively to Google's new release, which is made without any Nvidia chip, just making their own TPUs. And if you think this video was valuable, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything.